waivers?
Yeah,
Any
I
waivers?
know. There hasn't been any
You have
waivers.
to Photoshop
I
this, right?
forgot.
I want to look bigger.
Bigger chest.
Yeah.
But anyway, for those of you that don't know, Dan is under new bricks and mortar, right?
Yes. Yes, I recently changed positions from MBH to Vesta. And as of like essentially 48 hours ago, pretty much. So big news in me, it's really not going to change much. I'm still going to be at DAAR pretty regularly. It's just I'm going to be wearing a different t-shirt. So.
Great. And I've changed also last year. I'm with Movement Mortgage. So for those of you that didn't know, I'm a branch manager in the Dulles office over by Dulles Town Center and growing a branch of Movement, and the processes and the opportunities for loan officers is tremendous. So looking for any recommendations of any relationships that you currently have that of people that might not be thrilled with where they are and open to learning about some of the exciting things that we have going on. I'd love to chat with them. So I started putting this out there kind of in social media and stuff as the TRID talk. We're not here to bore you with education. This isn't a CE or PL accredited class, but I'm going to go through just a couple quick slides to start the conversations. I'm sure you've all attended at least 3 TRID type courses over the past year. It's something we've been preparing for a while, and so we don't want to bore you with what you probably already know, although there's some key terminology and definitions, but we want to hear from you and what your experiences have been since October 3rd. That's a day that will go down the books of a memorable event in our real estate and mortgage industry career. But TRID, if you didn't know, this is what it stands for. So many of the acronyms in the industry, we shorten everything that we can, and this was not the intent of the name of this legislation. Anybody know what it technically is called? So it is know before you owe. That's what the legislatures had intended for it to be. Know before you owe is what was written, but somebody got a hold of these words and dubbed the TRID, and then that took off. That gained the popularity because that's the type of thing that we're used to, but that's not really what this is called. It's all about know before you owe, and one of the consumer handbooks that has replaced an old one. You all should become familiar with that. At all, have any of your clients shared with you this 28-page document that they get as part of the upfront? You can look it up on, Google it too, the CFPB loan toolkit, but I do encourage you to become familiar with what's in there so that you can be able to answer questions or ask questions that you might have upon reading it. It doesn't apply to HELOCs, reverse mortgages, or property where the structure is not attached. I just wanted to mention it's not necessarily for everybody.
Or cash deals, by the way.
Yes, of course. The cash buyers are always, not subject to too much of our things here. This is also a presentation I am happy to send out to you all too. Again, we're not going to go through this whole thing, but it was a good start to kick off the talk and some of the things that have changed. So that loan estimate or LE, okay, everybody knows what that is. It's combined with what was the old good faith estimate and truth in lending. The intent to proceed is another big document. You might hear your lender say, I haven't gotten the intent to proceed back. I can't order an appraisal. Okay, so that intent to proceed is key in the fact that consumers are encouraged more than ever to be shopping around, and until they have made a commitment to move forward with the lender, at that point they've executed an intent to proceed, and it allows then the lender to collect monies, which we wouldn't have been able to do, and we can't order an appraisal until monies are collected. So I try to highlight for you guys the things that you need to know. There's so much more that Dan and I need to be aware of and what's going on behind the scenes, but so just so you know, appraisals can't be ordered without that document signed. As much that we can do electronically signed, there are a few documents as well that are part of the upfront package that are that do require wet signing. Your Home Loan Toolkit, something I talked about, it replaces the old settlement cost and you booklet, the list of service providers that they can shop for. We've always had something to that nature. The charm booklet is still being used for ARMs, and then the closing disclosure. That's the other big thing that has since replaced our Truth in Lending and HUD-1, and I sure do miss. I had a HUD-1 closing today, actually. She was in process that long before, and it was so nice because those closing disclosures are,
throwback closure.
Yeah, I mean they're big, and it's.
And we'll sort of go over how, from a title aspect, how we're treating the closing disclosure as another sort of lender document, and we created the ALTA statement to sort of mirror what the HUD one used to be, but still give the information that the new CD has. So your borrowers aren't going to be sort of thrown into the CD without sort of the life vest of an ALTA 7 statement. So we'll go through that in a second. So.
Okay. The big thing about the TRID and CFPB is the definition of an application. At what point are we subject to disclosure? And people will ask for an LE. Well, I have to give them an LE even if they haven't given me all their paperwork. But that's where the big difference of a pre-qualification versus a pre-approval is. And know what you are getting from your lenders and does it truly mean as far as the documentation and what process they've already put the client through. But these are the 6 elements, and once I have that, we're under law to start disclosing and put in place the applicable regulatory documents that go on. But we cannot I can't require any documents from somebody just in order to give them an estimate. Many people want to have the credit pulled and such to get an estimate, but we're not allowed by law to force that. They have to make that choice. And knowing the difference, again, between a pre-approval and a pre-qualification, that we actually have a document that they sign saying that, yes, they wish to go into full underwriting and they're willing to give us the bank statements.
So that's one of the early discussions you have.
Yes, early on. And movement is different in that we are underwriting TBD properties. This is one of the big things that does set us out is that taking a TBD and actually putting it through underwriting, because many companies just don't have the capacity and time really to be putting those loans through, so that you end up running into more problems when a TBD converts and then it doesn't get into underwriting for 2 or 3 weeks, where we do put them through up front. But until that property address, that 6th element has been defined, I'm still not required to do the regulatory disclosures. We are able to work with, based on their intent, and acceptability of not being forced to give us the pay stubs and tax returns. We can do that pre-approval. Here's just the difference between the pre-approval and the commitment letter, issuing a commitment letter. This is the big piece that I'm going to talk to you real quick, and then we're going to open it up for some opening dialogue because of the timing and the fact that, when an LE, by law, we cannot close a loan in less than 7 days because of the timing of when an LE, that upfront disclosure is issued. The soonest a closing date can occur is 7 days later, okay? But with TRID, I could technically give an initial CD the 2nd day of my application, okay? And a CD has to be out at least 3 days prior to closing. But the later of the 2 was the 7-day rule. So that means that I could still close a loan in 7 days. And it's the timing of the LE and the CD that becomes what the lenders are really having to monitor, and knowing if then any substantial changes have occurred. So these are things behind the scenes that we're looking at. I had a situation where initially the borrower came in as a 90% with mortgage insurance, right? Then in talking to her, she doesn't like the MI, and the upfront MI is costly, and we're looking at an 80-10-10. Oh, she loved that idea. I said, okay, we'll try, but 80-10-10, the secondary lien sources are much tighter with their ratios. We'll see what we can get by, because she's trying to use, she's vacating a property that she's gonna be renting, and we're using rent to offset in this new transaction. So we just probably should never have gone there, but because she wanted to proceed in 80-10-10, that's what she wanted to do. And it turned out they underwrote that whole scenario about vacating, turning your rental into turning your vacated property into a rental. And it was 7 days before closing that we were flipping to the 90. And technically, one more day, we would have had to potentially re-originate that whole thing, because changing the loan terms like that, changing from one product to another. So we encourage you to make sure your clients know and are comfortable with the program that they are set up for, because many people do have options. But even going from conventional to FHA or vice versa could potentially cause a complete re-origination because of these guidelines, okay? But when you look at the calendar, a TBD is received on day 1. The LO may request credit docs and issue what we call a loan estimate. On Saturday, day 3, the LO receives a property address, and now it's full application and disclosure that clock starts ticking. So the disclosure package is delivered, borrower returns the signed intent to proceed, and fees can be collected. And then this is the last day for the initial disclosure package to be issued. So from the date of application or knowledge of that sixth element, we have 3 days for the initial disclosure.
3 business days?
3 business days. Well, and that's where the LE has a different definition than the CD does as to whether Saturday is part of that. So we've adopted Saturday being that we are open for business, therefore it is part of our calculation. So LE and CDs will have the same days, business days, and except so Sundays and federal holidays will not be. But other lenders might not count the Saturday, and that's where you might lose a day in what you're thinking from that perspective. And the other key thing is by the time we issue a CD, the loan must be locked and the program identified. And ideally, we get that initial CD out, and again, being 2 or 3 days into the process, then I'm done. There's no worry right before closing whether a CD got out or not. We got our initial CD out because we got all the information from the title company. We're in touch with them early on in the process, and it will be smooth sailing from there. There are changes that can be made. A lot of people were panicking, like home inspection issues, and that's all stuff that's out of our control. It falls under a zero tolerance bucket. It's okay. I had capital contribution getting thrown into a CD. That's, it's not a lender or title company charge that has a tolerance with it. These are fees that the customer knew through the contract disclosure, right? So when the CD must be received by the borrower to close on October 14th, you count, since that was a federal holiday, 1, 2, 3. So if you have the closing, taking place here, you count backwards. 1, you don't count the holiday, don't count the Sunday, but 2, 3, and as long as my CD was back, out before that date, then we're good to go. Okay. So yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. No.
I've had a few different people say a few different things.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to clarify, because literally I probably have 4 different answers.
Yes, good.
4 different lenders.
Right.
So
Wait for the
it's really
5th.
frustrating. It's really frustrating. I've actually had several actually settlements that have been majorly affected by this due to the lender just pretty much, I think, not really getting it.
Doing too much business.
Yeah, sure. So you would have to send it on the 8th, correct? In order for the 9, 10, and 13 to close on the 14th.
No.
Or you can send it on the 9th and still close on the 4th.
Correct.
Okay, because I was told 3 days and then you can close on the 4th.
Well, that's why, here's the closing day, so I'm counting backwards. 1, skip, 2, 3.
But you can actually count the day that it's
Yes,
Right.
because I'm
Yes.
not counting the day I'm signing.
And that's key,
Yes.
because some people are not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's assuming it's all digitally sent.
Well, then that's a good point, because,
So let's hope it is.
so there's,
For this time, I don't want it. It's not that way.
there's terminology about the, like going by mail. The expectation is that if it goes by mail, that's why that initial 7 days is out there, because if it goes by mail, we can prove that we sent it, but we have to assume 7 days is the worst case of timing that they would have received it by mail. So the electronic allows us to document and have evidence of receipt. We can gauge that they opened it. But then I had a client, we sent it on Monday, whatever last Monday was, let's say the 13th. No, it was the 11th. She ended up not getting it back to us. She was looking at it, she had questions. She got it back to us wet signed on Wednesday. And then my people are telling me we couldn't close until the following Monday now, not that Friday. No, we couldn't close till Tuesday because Monday was a holiday. But I was able to go back and prove that she acknowledged the receipt. She was sending me emails asking questions, so we went off that Monday and we were able to close on Friday. But not every lender, I mean, some lenders are going to be, this is what we have. This is a wet signed document, and this, that's the.
No, I think you're bringing up a good point, because you have to really know your lender and what their policies are, because each lender
These are not
may
lenders I had.
No, I completely understand that. And they're interpreting it a little bit different, because some people, I've had a lender that I've worked with that, if they sent the CD before 5 o'clock, okay, that counts for that day. But, if they sent it at 6:30, technically after business hours, they're not counting it as that day, they're counting it after that. So, it might be worth the conversation with a loan officer to say, hey, what are your policies on such and such, just to know, where you stand as far as the closing is concerned. So,
Yeah, no, although I think most people are not very excited about the whole TRID thing, including myself, I think it definitely, for our industry, is really helps to weed out the people who know what they're talking about and who don't and aren't staying up with the
That's a good
trends.
point.
And I think it's honestly a great thing because you can start to make a list. Okay, I definitely am not going, I'm going to avoid working with this person because of this is what happened. And I have a list. And you know,
Well, and
I
as a
think
listing
it's-
agent, if you're a listing
it's a good
agent and you can scrutinize those pre-approval letters that are coming through and
Yeah, I
give
think
feedback
that's gonna
and,
happen a
hey,
lot more
you
now.
can use that lender, but I want a backup just in case. I want something simultaneously running so I have assurance that this loan will close.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how has the relationship changed between sort of lenders and title companies? Because we've obviously taken a back step, you know, as a result of this process, whereas we used to be much more intimately involved, but now it's very much with the lenders and the settlement companies.
See, I don't think the relationship has changed all that much. It's just the timelines have ramped up. So where you receive a title request from a lender and say, you know, they used to give you a couple of days to sort of deal with it. Now we know that, you know, we're all under sort of the gun to sort of get something. So when we receive something from the lender, it's not like, okay, I'm busy. I can put this on the back burner. It's like, okay, I need to know when this is closing, when they're anticipating it closing, and what information they need. You know, the information that they need from us initially is not, you know, something that we don't have on hand. So there's really no reason that we can't get it to them as quickly as possible. The only issue that we're sort of running into is taxes, because the taxes are based off the loan amount, not necessarily the sales price. So if the lender sends us the loan amount and that's it, we're sort of generating the taxes off that to give them the information we need. And then it's kind of causing a sort of a hiccup on what the tax amount is, because it's not always correct based on the information that we have. But that's sort of being ironed out now, and it's, you know, a couple weeks from now it's probably not going to be a problem. So that's sort of been, you know, identified as an issue, and we're all working it out. But it really hasn't changed anything between us besides we know that, you know, when they send us something, we need to get it to them right away. There's really no excuse not to.
I think the biggest role reversal on my side, or that I see, is that before the title company would be coming to us, asking us for something, and now we're going back to them saying, you know, where's this, where's that? Because we're the ones now preparing what had been the HUD. We, as the lender, are preparing that CD. So even with that initial CD, the idea is before we send that initial CD out, we got everything that we needed from them. And having those good relationships, the partner-lender relationships, we start working more autonomously as we get through it. The harder part is I get emails coming from all over from the agents. Oh, don't forget I have a $250 admin fee, or don't forget I have this. I'm like, I usually am not supposed to be dealing with all the agents' fees. I don't want to be held responsible for that. But I think we need to universally come up with a good sheet that still goes into the title company, because then we'll take any of that. Or as I put, the agent was giving a credit and the agent had this fee. Well, the title company didn't have the broker credit letter. So I'm having to stop what I'm doing and like getting back and getting all that stuff out to all the
that
parties.
process across
Right.
the table.
But there's really no reason why the agents shouldn't still give and treat the title company up front as you would have before, because we're still going to rely on all that information, and maybe do it to both parties, but don't cut the title company out of that, because then we're having to come back around because they don't have a lot of the disclosures that might have come up because you think only the lender needs it now. But I think for their records too, that the title company should.
So, you know, having worked for 2 title companies in the last, you know, 3 days,
3 weeks.
we're really putting a big onus on those information sheets that we send out at the very beginning, because the more information we have up front, the more information we can sort of filter to the lender at the very beginning, and the easier it makes to make this, you know, final CD. And, you know, they appreciate it, because if we tell them, you know, about your commission fee, or what's it called, flat commission fee, or any sort of credits that are sort of known beforehand, it's just easier to filter it to them now rather than later in the process where we're sort of knees deep in a CD already. So.
How is the close, I know like with Keller Williams, you have like a disclosure for our sellers so that we can get a copy of the closing documents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how are you seeing that being handled if you don't have that agreement? I would assume I'm sending it to both of you when I have it for my client or whatever, but.
As far as what document?
It's like with Keller Williams, we have this document, it says that we can get a copy of the closing document.
They're giving
because you
you
don't just
permission.
get it anymore.
Right. Well, it's kind of strange, and that's all being worked out because the workaround to that is that every title company probably in the next couple of months is going to send out with those initial documents a disclosure that just states, we don't care that if our agent gets certain documents, and 9 times out of 10 they're just going to be signed, and it's going to really sort of revert back to the way it used to. Yeah, exactly.
But the same practices because we still need the same information. It hasn't changed.
Right, and and as agents. And as title companies at the same time, we don't want to track, what's going on in the transaction as deeply as you guys obviously can because you're sort of knee deep in it. So we're trying to find a way sort of around this so that you can track what you are great at tracking, and that we can sort of, follow up at what we usually do. And the system sort of worked out. And, the law wasn't based on, trying to stop that. It was just based on trying to get information to the consumer quicker so they can make a decision. And some of these sort of quirky rules are just part of it. And there's ways around it, and not ways around it, but there's ways to circumvent it. So.
But I think it's a good idea to get some kind of a disclosure because I'll have agents asking me to want to make sure that because even the buyer's agents aren't getting copies of the CDs directly from the title company or myself, and they want to make sure their commission is right and on there. But now it's not on mine because it's paid out of the seller proceeds, so I don't even know.
Right.
And that's been a tough one. I mean, recently I feel bad, but I don't even see the seller side. As a lender.
And to speak to that, there's the Alta settlement statement, which is essentially the HUD. And the lender is not allowed to send out the CD because it's a lender document. It's very personal to the buyer, and by law they're not allowed to hand that out. But the Alta settlement statement is a title company document. We are allowed to give that to everybody. So when you go to a closing, you're not going to see the CD. It's really not that important because everything numbers-wise is going to be on that Alta settlement statement, and you're going to be able to see the commission. You're going to be able to see credits, pest inspection, home warranty, everything. And it's going to be all there in sort of HUD-1 form, but not the HUD-1. And we're going to go through it and sort of treating the CD as sort of a lender document, like the TIL, GFE, things of that nature, and the Alta settlement statement as the HUD-1. So
that sounds like a good suggestion, though, that it sounds like all of these folks can call the title company and ask for the Alta settlement statement, and you should get it, and it has both sides of the transaction.
Exactly.
Does that apply to all settlement companies?
I don't think it's universally used yet. 3 months from now, I don't think there's going to be anybody that's not using it. Both settlement companies that I know are using it.
And that software they already had. The problem with a lot of ourselves and title companies is that it takes a while to change your systems and to change the programming and formatting of documents. So it's cost us all thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to become compliant. So the HUD-1 is probably an easier, quicker document that a lot of these title companies would have access to. So by request, using that terminology, you're not asking for something you're not allowed to have. That would be good.
And the Alta settlement statement is going to be the go-to document to, do the most important thing in this room is to get you guys paid. Because, that's the sort of the thing we were running to at the very beginning because we can't give these CDs. So we were giving, there's a couple companies giving the disbursement statement that was signed by everybody. But, Omni said no, and, we couldn't. So we had to come up with a different document. And, the Alta settlement statement seems to work for everything. It works for HOA companies. So when we send them checks, they're okay with that signed document. It works for, brokers who, want to get you guys your money. And it works pretty universally for anything that we used the HUD-1 for before. Now we're just going to use that. So the CDs really, especially on the buyer side, really just, consider it like the truth in lending disclosure of the GFE. I mean, the seller didn't really see that to begin with, or they really didn't need to see that. So it's really a lender document, and it needs to be treated that way because it's personal to the buyer. But the Alta settlement statement is the document for the masses, I guess you can say. So
I think the other thing, have you guys been being asked for license numbers after the fact or after contract? Yeah. So that's a big, all of our licenses have to be embedded in the transaction. So do make sure that both parties of the contract on that, was it fifth page, that does have the licensing, because then it would save us time and, cut back on some of the work that we're having to, you guys supply to us. All my license is out there. But we do need all the licenses of the agents and parties
I
involved.
just added it to my signature line.
Yeah.
My broker was like, just throw it in your signature line, that way everybody's got it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can technically look it up on D4,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
unfortunately we've made our people do, so we
But
don't have to
I was
use.
gonna say, some of the names that aren't always the same.
Right, no,
That was-
it's,
There's a couple that are similar, like,
yeah.
is there a J or an L? in the
Yes.
middle name?
No,
I
that's
don't
true.
know.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any like sort of war stories here? Yeah, actually,
I'd like
does
to,
that have nothing
I
to do
need a
with
glass of
me?
I'd actually like to put you guys on the spot.
Okay.
Come October the 3rd, the doom and gloom merchants out there suggested that this was the Y2K of the real estate business, and it was all going to go horribly wrong, and there were going to be all sorts of problems that we weren't going to be able to resolve.
Mhm.
From each of your perspectives, how has TRID been received and managed to date, and are there any potential pitfalls that we've still got to address going forward?
I've seen the T-shirt that says "The reason I drink," so.
Ah,
Seen that.
Oh, the
You know
reason
something.
I drink. I should put that up.
Ladies first.
Oh, ladies first, okay. I feel like it's the Y2K, phenomenon, where it came, there wasn't an explosion, we were all still standing and woke up the next morning and went to work. But it's, keeping us on our toes, being more cognizant of dates is a big piece there, because I think we're still in a trial area, trial window that maybe my compliance folks are willing to be a little more, because they haven't kind of cut this off to where lenders are going to be fined, and I'm not sure who all can be fined. So, I don't think it has been as big of a deal. What I personally have gained from it is potentially winning contracts, because they have lenders out there that are sticking to a 45, 60-day turn time. And there's no reason for that, really.
Regardless, yeah.
There's really no reason for that. Because clearly, if they're not, it's just about when do they get that initial CD out. That is the driving, that's the only piece. If that initial CD is out, I mark my calendars, and my expectations for my staff is 10 days prior to every closing. Because on or before the 7th day, I do not even need a signature on that CD, because the mailbox rule kicks in. And if I'm inside that 7-day window, that's when I do need the signature or other kind of acknowledgement. So if my practice is getting a CD out 10 days before closing, I'm never going to have an issue. The product hasn't changed, and they've been locked. So my timetable of being able to close a loan in 8 days is still there, because I can, having Dan's information up front, I can get the initial CD out, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, it was definitely sort of trumped up a little bit too much. And I think anything you don't know is going to be a little bit scary. But no, it really hasn't been the doom and gloom everybody thought it was going to be. From a sort of a closing perspective, the biggest problem we have is just a software issue. Is that all these software companies that we use, and every title company uses, any title company that tells you that isn't having some sort of software issue is lying to you. Because we all use the same core software systems. And that's sort of the thing that we've been dealing with, but it really hasn't changed anything from a lender perspective or a title company perspective. It's just changed, I have a couple more gray hairs because I have to double check, every little thing that sort of gets accessed and, placed into this software, just to make sure that it's popping out correct, and, their information is matching up with our information. But, besides that, it's doing exactly what it should. It's giving the consumer a chance to look at it before closing. So if anything, it's made sort of life a little easier. So I'm walking into a closing now with a person who's looked at the numbers and sort of had a chance to generate, questions. And, I walk in there and I go through the numbers quickly. They have their questions, and we sort of, move through the process a little quicker than what normally would have been, maybe an hour-long session is now down to like 30, 45 minutes, just because they're more well-informed. And I'm getting more questions, beforehand. If someone gets the, CD from her on a Friday, they're calling me on a Saturday and saying, hey, what's this number? We're getting all that out of the way before closing, and then closing is just really a formality at that point. And so I think the bare bones of it has happened. What they planned on doing is actually occurring. It's just, we're dealing with the hiccups software-wise and, talking-wise, and, all that'll be ironed out, and it's going to come down to knowing who's doing what and trusting, that they're going to get it done, within that timeline. But besides that,
the people that stretch the process to 45 or 6 days, they're going to be taking all that time just to get the loans underwritten, and they're still going to run into issue by not getting a CD out 3 days before, because they just don't know how to work the system. I think that's something to be said.
Everyone was really worried about home inspection issues. Someone comes in and says, we need to give a $50 credit or something, needs to be fixed. That's all been, taken care of without, changing the APR or, it's the funny thing because, as long as you don't change the buyer side of the transaction, you don't have to get it redisclosed. So if we do have an issue home inspection wise, you come to me and say, hey, listen, they didn't fix the wall. The guy said it's going to take $50 to fix. We have this invoice. Do we need to redo the whole CD? It's no. We'll put the invoice on the seller side. We'll take it out of their proceeds, and we'll sort of keep going forward. I've only had one issue where the credit was so large going to the buyer because we couldn't get an invoice in time that it changed the APR, and we had to bump it out. That was going to happen. That was going to be an issue with the old system. So it's really not it's really not the issue that everyone thought it was going to be. So it's just not. Really.
As long as you work with a lender
What?
and a settlement
Right.
company that
Right.
is prepared
Right.
and knows the process.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Really, I
Yeah.
think truly.
Well, and the
Yeah.
new contract that came out in January does help protect your buyer. It says that if there's delays because of something.
It's not
Yeah.
as
It's just very stressful
Yeah.
for, well, obviously your client who's trying to sell and buy.
Right.
Their selling part is not working out, so they can't close on their buying part. And quite frankly, it's stressful on me.
No,
Yeah.
it is, but this is
So,
the
because it's out of your
process.
hands in so many ways,
It
you've
is.
done what you could do, and
But I think too, a lot of agents that are going to that are on the listing side are gonna be more, in tune with who the lender is
Right.
and
ensuring that.
kind of being like, we really need you to talk with somebody else
Mhm.
because
So what's the terms again? It's like pre-qualified versus pre-approved.
Right.
Pre-qualified is the more stringent approval.
Pre-qualified means nothing.
Okay,
It's the,
that's that
quick
30
and loads.
second letter.
30 second, how much did you make? Okay,
Yeah.
you can buy X.
You're okay.
And then that Schedule C comes in and they wrote off everything and it's 3/4 less than what they had said they made.
And it's more so just missing the deadline.
The dates, it's having the systems in place to.
But like you guys,
Ensure.
I think it's not a bad thing, quite frankly.
No, it's
I
not.
think
It's
it's
100%
it's
out,
holding our
who
hand
knows
to it.
what they're doing and who doesn't, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
People having more information is never a bad thing. And then getting it, with enough time to sort of look at it, absorb it, and, make a decision off it is obviously never a bad thing. So, the crux of this whole thing is just sort of us absorbing it as an industry, which is happening quicker than I think anybody thought it was going to. So, the mortgage side of it, the title side of it, and the agent side of it are all sort of figuring out how to work together with this. And, in a couple of months, this really isn't going to be a huge thing because I think everyone's going to start doing the same thing. We're going to see what's going to work, and everyone's going to sort of copy it. And that's already going on with the Alta statement and things of that nature. So it's getting absorbed very quickly, and I just don't see an issue with it sort of moving forward.
Is there anything that either of you see that the the realtor community can assist in sort of improving the process?
We talked about this beforehand, and I think it's just everyone industry-wide needs to ramp up their sort of pressure on consumers, sellers, everyone to get information in as soon as possible.
So you're seeing that as an issue at the moment? Get that
Yeah.
information back
Yes,
into you?
yes, we need your help in encouraging them to get their documents in. If they want that solid approval, you need to act quickly, that this is important. And if you want everything to go smoothly and not, be stressed or have gray hairs, the sooner they get it all in, the sooner the issues can be resolved. And to not be, that's great, shop around, but do it quickly and make a decision. And also when you're looking at the programs, narrowing that down and make a decision on those programs.
I thought they had to do it within 7 days anyways.
What?
Determine
Make
if
their
it's a lender.
application.
Yeah, make a-
Well, that based on the contract?
Uh-huh.
But 10 days is a long time
Yeah.
of a contract. That's a long time. We can be closed in that time.
Yeah.
One day.
So is it something then that perhaps we need to re-emphasize in our initial consultations with our clients,
Mhm.
when we go forward with a contract, we need to make sure that once we've locked down our lender, we need to make sure that we're getting this information that they are requesting back to them in a timely manner. We're not looking to discuss it between everyone and their dog. We need to get it back to you.
You're gonna have, it's easier on the first-time home buyers who's never been through this before.
Yep.
It's the repeat buyers that you've gotta remember.
No better.
You know, those are the most difficult ones now because things have changed. You know, why do you need all this stuff? I used to just, you know, that's, you all know that. But, so the first-time home buyers, they don't know any different, so they're getting the best of the new world, right? But it's the repeat buyers and just to be making decisions and certainly ask you or the lender, you know, and bounce that around if there's any questions or concerns. But that's the biggest thing I think from the agent side, and knowing all the fees, like who's paying the termite, and I don't know, so I don't see your information sheet. Is that the type of thing?
Yeah, we
you know,
will
any of
have
the
that
fees
on there.
involved in the transaction, home inspections, termites, who's paying for those fees, and if there's a broker credit. I mean, I can't tell you how often 2 days before closing we're finding out a broker credit, and I mean everybody should know this. I'm shocked at the people that. It's one thing to give me a credit.
We do know it.
You do,
They're
but
well aware.
they don't know you. They don't get the broker's letter.
But
But,
by the way,
Communicate that, should we communicate that to you, the lender? or
yes,
should we just-
both. I'm asking for both.
Yeah,
It's some attorney.
Both.
yeah, if we have it, we send it. Any information that we have sort of pertaining that is going to be on that
For
CD,
transaction related.
we're sending it over to them. So, you know, and this goes, like we did at the very beginning of the process, so once you ratify a contract, I know there's usually some delay in getting it to the title company. You're gonna wanna make sure you get that right away, because that sort of starts our process in getting you those letters. And the quicker you have those letters, the quicker you can get those back to us. And, you know, the more information we have, the more we filter to the lender, and it just works better. So
at what point do you start your discussion with the lender?
well, as soon as we get the contract and we see who the lender is, we reach out. Usually they've
24,
already
48
reached
hours.
out. That's the thing, is that, you know, sometimes there's a little delay in the contract, so we'll sometimes get their request before we even have, you know, a ratified contract.
Right.
We're like, can you send us that contract?
It's a good practice
it's-
to just notify, if you have that good relationship, notify both.
Both.
Yeah.
Your
Right, no,
key
and
points
that's-
at both places, even though we're not necessarily the support people or the processors, but we'll farm it out then to the people that
Right.
need that information, and then knowing that it's gone both places, it will come back again at the end on the CD. You know, some people we put in a practice where, you know, some people will caution on getting a CD out too early because there's ramifications. Once an initial CD has gone out, we're stuck to these tolerances, right? And if anything changes outside of the tolerances, we're paying. But I'd rather pay, you know, all of a sudden I find out, I might send out an initial CD before I get an appraisal back. Your appraisal was done subject to, needs a final inspection. Guess who's paying for that final inspection?
Fair. Sure.
Mary, no, Mary.
No.
So because I wanted that initial CD out, but, you know, so things like that, this is the tolerance bucket where lenders, charges, and credits. Once that initial CD is out, there cannot be any changes. So whatever, if I have to do a credit report supplement, it's gonna cost another $25, I'm paying for that. Broker charges, transfer taxes. So then there's the 10% on the unaffiliated third-party charges that I, you know, didn't have any knowledge of or choose their services. And then these are the types of things that people got, you know, amounts placed in escrow. Where do you think that's coming from, potentially? You know, it could be some improvement things, but even home inspection type stuff. So that doesn't cause, everybody was panicking about home inspections having to be done, you know, so many days before, but this stuff doesn't, you know, change our timeline of when we may or may not be able to close because it's allowed to be added on at the end. And a CD can change at the table, something, you know.
It scared so many people that we haven't really seen that many home inspection issues, which is, you know, the fear is out there, and we just haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in the last couple months, you know, come with any sort of major, besides that one.
Are they being done earlier? Are you guys, what is your practice right now with home inspections?
Hasn't changed.
So you're doing them in the same?
Same timeframe.
It depends on the situation.
Well, I'm sorry, the final walkthrough, not the home inspections up front, but the final
I
walkthrough.
think it
That's,
depends on what you're looking at. If you're
Yeah.
talking about changing a handle versus like replacing the unit outside.
So
No, and I
depending
think
on
it's
the
a different way to
scope
do
of
it. Yeah, so if you're having major work done to windows, roofs, things of that
Yeah.
nature, I think
Check
it
on it.
pays to
And that was
check
always
those
going to be an
couple
issue,
things. Yeah,
even pre-trade.
Right.
It was still the same problem.
exactly.
yes, Dwayne?
Yeah, to piggyback off of Barry's question, how can we as realtors help you meet those timeframes? What can be done at the table and what cannot be done to impact it? You know, I'm always cognizant of if something changes, it moves everything. If there's a cheat sheet that I can be educated on, that I can educate my buyer and so on, I would love to have it.
Mhm.
I understand how to play the game. It's the time is of the essence issue,
Mhm.
and the dates and times throughout this thing. So if you have a cheat sheet that can help me do your job, then I would love to have it.
Okay, we'll
I
put our
have
heads
a few
together maybe.
suggestions as a project manager. I work in Microsoft Project. You populate one date and it shows everything through it. So if you had a tool on your website, I know it's spending money in programming, but if you put your closing date and it populates backwards,
Of what needs to have happened by
print
when.
out.
It's like a
You
timeline.
put it in your listing presentation, look, you know,
Milestones.
this is what it looks like for you, and then once you get the sellers.
And that'd be pretty cool if I could give you them the calendar, Dwight, that says, okay.
It
we
is,
had to
I
do
mean,
this.
I built it for my clients, that's how I keep myself sane,
It's
my
Microsoft
background for training is project management, so. But a simple tool that's, you know,
Yeah.
even a customer could be like, they always
Right.
wanna check us now, I mean.
Even,
It's a good
even to
thing.
the point where they could be logging in, I mean, I think, do you guys have a portal that people can log in and see how the file is
Yeah.
moving through the
Yep.
process?
We have a test.
We send out milestone, touches as things have happened as well, like when the CD is out.
Good.
So you see that, that's an automatic thing that I don't have to think twice
Or
on.
just a quick pop out, these are like last, this is your due date.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my
Yeah, all fees need to be disclosed or all, But see, most of the time, though, these things that you have knowledge of are not gonna impact a delay. Those aren't gonna impact the APR or cause it to go into a,
Inconveniences rather than true issues.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
still a
those are-
general rule on sort of any sort of credit. You can get an invoice from it and we can just put it on the seller side. It's always better than having, at the closing table, it's same HUD, CD, same thing. If we make a change, we still gotta let the lender know, they still have to approve it and, things of that nature. So if we know ahead of time and can get an invoice, take it out of the seller's concession, it's just gonna make life a little easier. It's not necessarily gonna change the closing date. It's just going to cause a lot less stress the day of closing. So that's, it really didn't change from HUD to now. It's just, pretty much.
But I think there are lenders that think that those are gonna impact
Right.
it and cause panic. Where I know that I got to the table and somehow there wasn't a full HOA set up and Pam was doing the closing and she thought they were gonna have to cover it to not delay anything. And I was like, no, you can put that there. And they just went back and got another CD cleaned up and it wasn't something.
Right.
I saved you guys money, you didn't have to take it out. We weren't gonna delay the closing anyway, but it was all able to be taken care of and still charged to the buyer.
Exactly.
Who rightfully should have been paying it anyway.
So it's long story short, it's just not the changes at the table can still occur. It's
Right.
just, it's not the problem that we thought it was going to be, but it's best practice to try to get those cleaned up. I mean, that's really it.
Locking in, I think another thing is though encouraging your buyers to lock in. I mean, the market, it's gonna move day in and day out. We are fortunate that it is actually it's even probably a little better than it was the last quarter of last year. But the sooner they lock in, then the more comfortable we know that the program has been solidified and getting that initial CD out can happen. And it saves them sleep by not having to worry about it day in and day out, what the market's going to do. We only have heard that it's likely going to go up, but we just don't know. So I ask that, encouraging them to lock in. What's an eighth of a point, what eighth of a percent going up or down? Rather it be where you like what the payment is and not have to worry about it going up or down. But.
And I think just the bottom line of this whole situation is that it's ramped up the timelines for us as just an industry, not just the lender, not just the title company, but as agents as well. The quicker any information comes in, or the quicker that we're able to sort of funnel all the information we need in, the better the closing's gonna be. I mean, that's really sort of the long and short of what's been going on. And some people are very good at getting information in, and the closing just goes off well. But it's like if you're delaying with that, you're sort of putting in danger all those timelines that are sort of set in stone now. And that's it. It's as long as everyone's sort of following the same timeline, really nothing's changed from my perspective anyway.
Have you had any post-closing situations where I know that we're doing a 60-day audit and we can reissue a CD in 60 days?
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that's still in conjunction with you guys. I've seen a couple that just, minor errors, nothing that was dramatic, but there have been reissuances of CDs.
No post-closing issue. No,
It's not that it's a issue, it's just that they found.
No. Not to this, I mean, knock on wood, we haven't had run into any issues yet. We've run into issues sort of where you know, we've gotten your CD and, you know, ours doesn't match, and there's something a little off, and we know what it is, and we sort of have to fix it in the back end. But that's, again, just more of a software issue rather than, you know, a big issue.
From a management standpoint and admin standpoint, we haven't had many issues with the actual transaction itself, but the post-closing with commissions, we've run into some errors. We've worked with a small unnamed title company that sent commission somewhere, and they couldn't tell us where they sent it. We don't know, like, we can't tell you.
Or by
No,
card check?
they sent it somewhere. There was a reload company involved.
Okay.
But they're supposed to send us the commission we pay out there. So eventually we found out that they paid the reload company directly, which is fine if we knew about it, but there's X amount of dollars lost that they felt they couldn't tell us about where they sent it. So that kind of miscommunication behind the scenes doesn't affect the client, but affects the agents.
Right.
Which is not good. So
Agent's commission is never going to be part of the lender,
Right.
so that's
No, that's fine. And that's sort of, I wasn't part of this transaction.
Don't use that title company.
You see how we looked at me?
Wasn't our choice.
So the Alta statement's going to take care of that, because right when the Alta statement was first introduced, it didn't really have very much information on it. Now you're going to see where that's going. So it's going to have, you know, where the money, you know, it's going to have the commission where it's going. So the agent's going to be able to see, hey, my money's going to, you know, such and such reload company and not me. That's wrong, and we can make that change. So that shouldn't happen for any company that's using, you know, this statement, because the agent, you know, if they're looking to where their money's going, should be able to catch that, you know, pretty quick. Some, you know, reload companies, so instructions are a little confusing, so I can see where someone might have gotten kind of screwed up with that. But at the same time, you know, everyone should be able to see where that's going, because the Alta statement sort of mirrors our disbursement statements. So none of those should be off, where you're not going to see a Weichert Realtors on there and then on your disbursement statement say, you know, A, B, and C reload company. So they have to mirror. That's just how the system works. So that shouldn't be a problem for me.
Problem solved.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any stories of anything, any transactions lately?
They killed it.
Any,
Gotcha.
even if the buzz in your office, as you hear?
No, I think we had this sort of perception in the marketplace that you know, this was going to be a real trial for everybody. But you know, apart from one or two, you know, stories that, and it happened pre-TRID, so you know, this is no different. You know, I don't really see there's been a major change anywhere.
No.
It's just tightened up perhaps some of the lax procedures that existed beforehand.
Yep.
Particularly with regard to timelines, where it was all a bit lackadaisical. At least now people are being forced to address the issue of timelines to make sure that information that's required at a certain time point is being provided wherever in a timely manner, so that we can still get to the closing table the day we ask for it.
No, yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. Really gone are the days where we're sort of waiting for HUD approval at noon for a 3 o'clock closing.
Yep.
You know, that CD's had to been approved, you know, 48 hours for, you know, us to be able to close on that. And we're just waiting for, you know, docs at that point, or, you know, something to finalize. But, you know, it is making the final process easier. It's just we're sort of ironing out the middle part, which is, you know, it's happening quick. You know, no one's making really the second mistake. I mean, no one's really making the same mistake twice. And we're just sort of ironing out the process as we go here. And like I said, a couple months from now, I don't see any of these things being really big issues, because the software, even, you know, as slow and painful as it has been, is really catching up quicker than we expected as well. So it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's just, you know, everybody's sort of trying to catch up to it right now. So.
I'm sorry, this is a repeat, but on the Alta statement, is that something that the agent has to be sure to ask for it, or the title company?
No, I mean, we're providing it at every closing, so everyone's looking at the same thing. At our closings, and I think a lot of people are going to start handling it the same way, the Alta is sort of being shown as what the HUD one used to be, and the CD is sort of being treated as a lender document. So, you know, buyers and sellers will be going over the HUD one Alta, the Alta statement, and then directly behind that will be, you know, on the buyer side, the CD, we'll just make sure everything, matches up, and then, the buyer will sign both sort of in conjunction with one another. So the agents will have that, they can walk out of the room with that, and that's what we'll be emailing to them and sending them their commission checks, in order to, yeah.
We're running into, where we need the signatures for pay, and the combined Alta statement. I believe on the last page, you can get the buyer and the seller to.
Yeah, that was in the new ramped up version of the sort of the updates, because before they were sort of the signature page it wasn't separate from the actual document, so we were running into any changes, you had to get a whole new thing signed. So now we're just slapping a generic signature page on the back, so that way we can just get approval, on any sort of changes that happen, because sometimes they do happen, and we're giving those to the agents instead of. We're combining the signatures and giving those out as well. So does that make sense? So it's exactly like the HUD one used to be. It's the same signature page actually. So.
Kind of stepping back a little bit in the transaction process. Some of the senior agents that we've been at a presentation on the new contract, and there was some huddle about when you remove your financing contingency. And your agent have a lot of buyers rather than listers, so of course I was like, I'm holding tight to that as long as possible and giving them the best date for my buyers. But the more senior people in my office that have a lot more listings were like, oh no, I'm going to advise my sellers that if I get a long lead contingency for finance, that we're either going to reject your offer or make you tighten that up. But what really is that line? I guess so. That's my long story to get to the point. Where is that line kind of in that timeline to help protect those buyers better, and also be a mutual player at the table to the listing side, so that everybody feels, happy medium. It's got to be a win-win or lose-lose for everybody to feel happy. So.
This is a kind of
what
question.
document would I say to my sellers, you have it, we can absolutely feel comfortable, you're safe. Is it that CD? I mean, that's really,
No, because, that initial CD, remember, could go out day 2.
Yeah.
So that's just because that went out doesn't mean they're done, because there's still a lot of things that can happen. So until you actually have the lender commitment.
So we're still at that point.
Right.
Yeah,
That's about 10 days.
But see, the thing is, really in our world today, it's never done until it's done in the signed CD at closing, the signed final CD, because there still are, 5-day pre-close type audits that lenders will do. Some lenders, we have a credit report monitoring system throughout the process, so that if there's any inquiry hits, we'll be notified right away so we can address that inquiry. Some lenders will do a 2-day pre-close rerun, and now there's an issue or something that has to be addressed and they're scrambling. So could they have gone car shopping and bought a new car and no longer qualify? And I would have known that 3 weeks ago, kind of thing, of when they were doing it.
So still pretty good. I have my little cheat sheet, with the different timelines on the conventional loan for closing process and timelines for FHA and VA. But it was just one of those things, it got to a point that I told the listing agent with permission from my buyers, if you're so strongly about it, issue us the notice or whatever, and we'll react to it.
That's going to be a debate.
It got very negative. It was like,
that's a debate that's always going to happen. From a listing agent standpoint, you're always going to be pulling for that to be sort of limited.
As you should.
But from a buyer, you got to hold that on for as long as possible. It's one of those fights that's probably going to go on until, it just is what it is. And both sides know it. So there really shouldn't be a lot of animosity for it, because you're both just doing what you have to do to protect your clients. And, that it just happens.
That listing agent probably been burned before. They're not going to let down and not let it happen again.
After some nasty emails.
Yeah, because otherwise, as a manager, what do you guys recommend to your folks on that whole contingency thing?
Sure. So we had this conversation just last week. It is a tough one, because up until now it was kind of you just let it ride.
Yes.
And it goes through. But now there's consequences for your seller if you do that. There's more so where I think a lot of sellers, once we educate them on what their options are, will decide to force the hand to remove that contingency, which I think is what we should allow them to do.
Absolutely.
They have that decision, but up until now we kind of said, well, we can do this, but it almost doesn't matter.
Right.
Where now it really does matter, because once they remove that contingency, the protections of the buyer
and their EMD and all
and
that
then
kind of
everything
stuff.
goes away. So now we can't delay for various reasons, where it's almost like an open-ended free delay, if we don't do that.
Well, and then that's where it's gonna come down to the buyer knowing exactly where they stand with the lender and what's left to be done, and the lender and buyer having a heart-to-heart, and the lender, it can be some minutia stuff that enables them to, or disallows them to give a commitment, but yet they know it's gonna be fine. And it's ultimately up to that buyer to relinquish his contingency.
Right.
And if he responds in that 3 days and he's given up his contingencies, he knows his risks. If you educated him well, as the
I
buyer's
think
agent.
God do not touch anything.
Right,
You have no
right.
credit card.
The do nots, yeah.
So
Congratulations,
it
you're
it
approved.
really is the listing agent almost communicating to the buyer's agent so that they can communicate to the buyer early on, we plan to request you to remove rights at the deadline.
Mhm.
I talk to our sellers and they understand, the contract, and we, come 21 days or 30 days, whatever it is, we're gonna be asking to remove this, so just
Just so
be
you know.
aware, right?
Yeah.
So having that conversation ahead of time, hopefully will get that agent representing the buyer on the ball to stay on top of their lender,
Mhm.
and maybe they have that conversation with the lender, hey, this listing agent plans to ask us to remove this contingency.
Mhm.
Let's see what
Right.
we can do to get everything done before then.
So, yeah, it will continue to be potentially a touchy, sticky,
Yeah.
soft part, and you just have to carefully walk with your partners in that process and, within the boundaries that are set.
Yeah, because you're always going to teach every class, from a listing side, you're going to say, try to get this released as soon as possible. From a buyer standpoint, you're like, well,
Don't know.
hold on, never bring it up, let it,
Like
let it
a
ride.
life hack.
And, it's always going to be a little bit of, it doesn't really have to be a fight, but at the same time, it's never really going to go.
But I also think that what TRID has actually done for us on this side of the table is it's forced us to focus on the financial process.
Mhm.
Whereas before we knew it was going on and it would meander through the sort of process, but we never really sort of pushed or prodded or
Right.
requested, it was something that was going on while we were dealing with all the other crap.
Stuff.
You're on video,
Stuff.
Barry.
So I think it's actually forcing people to focus now on the things that are probably important, and particularly with regards to timelines. So if there are timelines that need to be addressed from our clients, whether on the listing or the selling side, it doesn't matter. It sort of hones in that sort of process now and makes sure that you guys who probably need that information in a timely manner are going to be receiving the best service that you can get from us.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's really just that. It's just ramped everything up to the point where everyone needs information as soon as possible. And, obviously from you, great. They need it from us, and the quicker that you and I can get it to her, it's just better.
And that the technicality of that date has nothing to do with this date, that doesn't,
Yeah, I know.
that's just another part of the process.
Similar.
Absolutely, absolutely.
See what it's
I've seen some
possible.
financing contingency removals be the date of closing, just because it's 21 days, that's a fairly quick closing, or potentially even after. It might say 30 days, but closing date is sooner. One is not date specific, but number of days, and the other's a date, and it's past the closing date. So, I don't know how that necessarily works out that way. But.
No, I mean, I've taught, classes to
Exactly.
they hate this role and vice versa. So it's really not going to change much with that. You're still going to have that battle out, on a case-by-case basis, unfortunately. So.
Is there anything else that you were hoping to get out of this tonight that you haven't heard, or did you take something away that you feel you didn't know coming in? Yes.
Mary, on the listing side, what would be the top 3 things the listing agent that you would want to ask the buyer's lender that you think would be a good thing to ask?
Okay.
To make sure that the lender, is.
That's great question.
She's not plumbed.
No. So 1 was, have you pulled credit? 2, has an underwriter reviewed this? I might give you more than 3. So 3 would be, have you run it through an automated underwriting system?
That can be answered.
Yeah. Because a lender typically, again, they're not forced to even have to pull credit to issue a pre-qualification letter. They tell me they have a 740 credit score. But has credit been pulled? Have you run AUS, and what was the result? And the underwriter.
AUS, you said?
AUS is automated underwriting system. And if they haven't been through underwriting, have you Mr. Loan Officer reviewed their income and assets to know that they have the cash to close.
And last thing, at our board meeting this morning, we were talking about the Rocket mortgage and how are they fulfilling that? Which
Is this a new lender out there?
Quicken,
Is this by competition?
Quicken.
Quicken is,
I don't think they're
what are they saying? What's their message?
It's a commercial, probably.
It's,
Rocket. But
it's all online.
Yeah, it's all.
so are they issuing pre-approvals?
That's,
But you don't know what,
that's what we
But you've got
understand.
no idea about
No one's
the
close,
quality.
Yeah, that's what we understand.
yeah.
It's a fun name. I mean, I'll give them that.
It's a great TV advert.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
it really is.
I get, a lot of times listing agents come to me and say, you know what, can I call the buyer's lender and talk to them about this? And my answer is always, you can ask them anything you want. It's up to them to decide what they can and can't tell you.
Right.
What are some of the questions that you get asked now that you can't answer, that maybe you could before?
What is their credit score? Do they really need this much seller contribution? I mean, I can answer that to some degree, but that seller contribution one is tough because whether they need it or not, they want it. So I can't take subjective.
Of course, yeah.
I tell them to go in and ask for 14 if you only need 10 because you got to leave yourself room for negotiating. So,
What is it phrased for?
yeah, that's true. I mean, not going to tell me. So credit score, do they really need that seller contribution? Can they afford the higher price, that the list price versus the,
Oh, like an escalation situation.
yeah.
Does that mean the quality of the questions that are coming to you have
So-
improved or have just got worse?
Oh, no, I mean, I
Depending on your
still,
perception?
yeah, I mean, I still get,
So what is your answer? I'm sure you get that a lot. They offered 500,000 and we're thinking about countering back at 525. Can they afford that?
mhm.
What do you say?
I probably have to say yes. Yeah. Or I haven't run that number yet because we haven't, they didn't want to go, they wanted to keep things. I'll find a, if it's a listing agent I want to do business with, then,
Right.
that's what, I mean, that one, I'm not disclosing, personal information, but can they qualify? I believe so. I have to kind of leave it open until I actually put it through. If I haven't looked at those numbers, directly or that high, we haven't been in that ballpark. That's a good
In
question.
some cases, the buyer does qualify, but wants to keep the
Sure.
monthly
Right,
loan
payment.
page
Right,
low.
right.
And that's the reason doesn't want to go for the profit.
Yeah.
How do you defend that buyer?
Well, it says, again, that's a personal choice. I can't put them into more house than they want to afford because my ratios are only taking in so much of the credit report that has been provided versus they know their own personal finances and their childcare expenses and a lot of other things, their personal spending habits that we don't get into. So they know their own means and I can qualify people oftentimes a lot more than what they want to pay. So it comes down to their preference. They didn't want to exceed a mortgage over X, and at this time, because the rates are where they are, 500,000 is giving them their max payment threshold. So I'd probably come back around like that 500 was, their maximum, and leave it as, I don't know, I haven't qualified them at 525.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let me ask.
Yeah.
Not qualified for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd have to be cautious to some degree on the exact, data, the information that we're.
What's their social security number?
Right.
No.
Anything else? Those extra questions put us 5 minutes over.
They're asleep.
Can we do some like outtakes now, like crazy?
Can we turn it off?
Yeah.
You're still being recorded. So go.
Yes. Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.